How's everyone doing? My name is Shawn Schwegman. Hey, Tyler. Good to see you. My name is Shawn Schwegman. I'm here to talk today about 10 proven tactics with AI that lead to immediate growth. Quick icebreaker. I launched my own AI company about 6 weeks ago, and then had a planned trip overseas to Europe for 5 weeks. Was scheduled to get back earlier in the weekend, a couple of delays, and so I didn't get back until late last night and haven't slept. So this is either going to be a really good, speech or a really bad one. But thank you all for showing up. If you take one thing away from today, I would take this away. When it comes to AI, the writers of yesterday are now the editors of tomorrow. And this doesn't mean writers from a lit standpoint perspective. It means pretty much everyone needs to think that way. Developers, I mean, pretty much any industry, marketing, copywriting, development with code writing, you don't have to necessarily do the heavy lifting anymore. AI is freeing us up to do more of the strategic work, but it's hard stuff. There's a ton of noise right now. I will say AI has been around for a long, long time. The math has been around for decades. It's only been recently since it's gotten a lot of hype, primarily due to one sliver of AI, which is generative AI. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. I hate spending too much on this, but I think it's a relevant slide, and it kind of shows the progression really of my own journey and my journey with AI in particular. So I'm old, 1990, I'm 50 years old. Really kicked off my career in the early 90s and spent the first decade really with getting highly technical with data architecture. I worked at a Kaizen, which was a Microsoft solution partner here in the tri-state area, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, they operate out of. They're one of the top Microsoft partners in the country. And this is back in the days where I got my Microsoft certified systems engineer and Microsoft certified trainer and Microsoft certified, DBA and a ton of other certifications. And I had the opportunity, I was kind of thrown into the fire, as it were, with Star Bank and got to work on their data warehousing project. And I've had a passion for data all my life, but I also got an opportunity to go work with Fetchheimer. Fetchheimer Brothers is a Berkshire Hathaway company, and that's where I met Patrick Byrne, probably one of the smartest humans on the planet. He's got a photographic memory and brilliant strategist. He pulled me to the next phase of my career. So the first phase was all about data and my passion for data and learning data architecture and databases and data infrastructure. The next couple of years was all about high growth. It's something I always call catastrophic growth. I would liken it to taking a brand new plane off the runway and going straight to Mach 10. I mean, when you do that with a brand new plane, it stresses every single piece, and that's what we did with Overstock. From 2000 to 2005, that company grew from 3 million to 800 million in revenue and became a $1 billion company. Later bought Bed Bath & Beyond here recently. But at Overstock, wild ride. I went there to be the CTO, ended up taking over marketing, so I was the CTO and the CMO and held both those roles at the same time. And I knew nothing about marketing, but I knew data. And marketers were more creative in the early 2000s than data-driven. Data-driven, I would say, kind of really started to take off throughout the 2000s as those worlds of technology and marketing collided. We spent a lot of time in AI, even back in 2000, 2001, 2002. We hired the head of predictive analytics at Amazon, pulled him out of Amazon into Overstock, and he built predictive analytics or product recommendations at Overstock, and it was a game changer for us. That that type of AI, we used to call it math. The greatest rebranding on the planet that's ever happened is really from mathematics to AI. Now math is sexy and cool because it's artificial intelligence. But at Overstock, we went from a few hundred SKUs to several million over the trajectory of the company. I ended up leaving in 2005, and they're working. I got pulled into another company called BigCommerce, which was an e-commerce platform, and our customers were, we did back-end order management and fulfillment for companies like Target, and we had an e-commerce storefront, think Magento on steroids, or and what the founders realized is because we had a rev share or transactional model, when our customers grew, we grew. So I was tasked with building an agency inside of that company. So knowing data and knowing how to manipulate data for marketing growth, the first hire I made was a data scientist. And we basically recreated, again, predictive product recommendations that we infused in email, on the website, I mean, you name it, in order to generate growth. In the first 6 weeks of that agency's life, we kind of talked to all of our customers and generated 1.6 million in revenue just from the management fees, not including the lift that we would also gain revenue on. Did that for a couple of years, and then I moved out of that and did some consulting for companies that had either didn't know how to grow marketing or were in times of trouble. I'm not going to hit all of them. I mean, Linksys, Cummins, phenomenal companies. Harry and David was one that is worthy of note. I also helped like Sally Beauty and a ton of other companies in that time frame. But Harry and David was going through a chapter 11, so I got the phone call to come help them figure out how to right size marketing and some of the other areas in the company to get it back on track. What I found was shocking. Harry and David was one of the first print catalog companies that really revolutionized print and turned it into a predictive engine. So they didn't have a single catalog that they sent to everyone. They had many different catalogs that they printed off, and they used predictive math basically to figure out which catalog should go to which buyer around the United States, and which one had the highest propensity to generate more lift. And what they did, even though it was print catalog, old school, that same math was sort of later deployed on digital, right? So the point of this story is that the math for AI and AI itself have been around for a very long time and had different use cases. It's only really gotten sexy recently because we now have the computational power and massive amounts of data to train LLMs and generative AI and create images and stuff like that. Then I came to Indianapolis and met up with Scott Jones. He's the founder of Voicemail, right? And he created a little company called Cha-Cha. 90 million of capital got infused into that company, and it was a question and answer engine. I will say, we got 3 million questions a day on text, and humans would answer those questions, and then we used AI to basically collapse similar questions. What it taught me was that a question has an extremely high amount of intent, and that is really important to a company that's trying to capture the right prospect. If you understand what people are searching for, how they're searching for it, what questions they're asking, good things can happen. Now, I will say a little piece of me died every day that I worked there because we got a 500,000 questions a day about Justin Bieber, and I did not like that kid. But Cha-Cha had an opportunity to work with, again, brilliant folks who went on to do incredible things. Some of them are in AI companies, Exact Target, Angie's List. Cha-Cha was sort of a all paths kind of in Indianapolis crossed around Cha-Cha, Exact Target, Interactive Intelligence, and a few other companies. But I had a great honor to work with some wonderful folks. Cha-Cha, we were up against Google. We competed with them, and in terms of share of voice. Back in 2010, you didn't have people also ask, right? You didn't have the little thing on Google that had questions. They didn't have that covered at the time. And Google doesn't like it when you ask questions from another place that is not Google. So every single SEO update and algorithm update that came out through the entire 2.5, 3 years that I worked there hurt Q&A, and I think that was deliberate, although who knows. But Cha-Cha went from 12 million monthly visits to 80 million monthly visits in a 2.5 year time period, turned into a top 40 website, top 5 in mobile. We just couldn't outmaneuver Google forever, and eventually the company went under. But the technology and the talent that was at Cha-Cha was unbelievable. The next part of my career led me to co-founding Demand Jump. So Christopher Day, who's now at Elevate, was my business partner and the other co-founder. We went in on it together, had a great ride. Demand Jump started out as an analytics attribution and recommendation engine, and through multiple pivots became what I believe to be one of the best content strategy engines on the planet. The thing that we did differently is we invested in AI early. Now that is very costly, right? We didn't have generative AI. There's a gentleman sitting in the back there who's probably he's the smartest guy in the room. Tyler Foxworthy has been a mentor. He was the chief data scientist at Demand Jump, a phenomenal talent and an absolute genius. He and Zach Cardwell, who now is running Data 317, and one or two other folks, but really Tyler was sort of the brainchild of the operation from a data science and an R&D perspective. Sorry to brag on you, Tyler. They created ChatGPT before ChatGPT existed. We actually had the ability to create net new content. And we were early. We didn't have all the training data that goes into the LLMs of today, and we never launched it because it wasn't quite ready. But out of that spawned a ton of other projects. And it was an amazing thing to see coming in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning and seeing 2 or 3 data scientists around a whiteboard and a giant, mathematical calculation that I got lost in on the first line that ended with E does not equal MC squared. Like they literally, unbelievable mathematicians. So when you put all this together, right, I've been involved with different types of AI over the course of my entire career, over the last 20, 30 years. I would not call myself an expert. I've just been fortunate enough to work with plenty of them. But that's all led me, data, marketing, growth, analytics, Q&A, SEO, content strategy. It's all led me to the next sort of company, right? It's all kind of built up to this moment, and I was delighted to be able to sort of launch that company 6 weeks ago, and then I took 5 weeks to go to Europe. If you're starting a company, imagine the types of conversations you have when you're launching it. If the founder goes off to Europe to play around in Ibiza and Mykonos and Athens for 5 weeks, imagine the conversations you have to have with your investors, with the operational folks, with customer service, with your developers and product folks, keeping everything on track. Fortunately, I don't have any of that. I'm the only employee in the company, and I've been able to build it so far using AI and no-code, low-code tools over the last 18 months. Zero investment, raised a lot of capital over my career. Hopefully I'll have to raise capital with this one as it takes off, as growth is costly sometimes. But we're in a different world now than we once were. And this is a fractional economy. So I have accounting help. I have a marketing agency. I have a service component. They're just not employees. They're partners, and it's outsourced, and it's super efficient. And 6 weeks out of launch, Co-Content has already generated over 500 pieces of content and should be on track for over 120K in ARR by the end of this month, just in a couple of weeks. And I was out of the country for 5 of those 6 weeks. And I'm saying that not to brag, but more to say, if I can do it, anyone can, right? You just have to know how and know when you're over your skis and you need the right help and who the experts are that you can learn from. You guys have seen these types of logos slides before. The key thing here is in 2012, there were 139 logos on this, and it wasn't AI, it was called big data. This has morphed over the last 12, 13 years into big data and AI. That's also very important. You cannot have good AI without data. And people sometimes forget that, and I'll explain what I mean in a few minutes. From 2012 to 2023, we went from 139 to 1,400 logos. And then in 1 year, 23 to 24, we added another 600 logos, right? Many of those companies will survive and many might not. But what's key is the space is just absolutely exploding. It's like the dot-com bubble, right? Like it's just blowing up. I'm saying that to say, be careful. You have to pick the right partner, service provider, partners to surround yourself with, and you have to pick the right tools. And the other thing I'd say is, you don't have to build the AI yourself, right? If I run a food delivery service, I'm not going to build my car. I'm going to buy a car or rent a car or hire drivers that have a car. I've got bigger fish to fry, and I need to stay focused on my core business. And so don't get over your skis with AI, and I'll explain more as we go along. I'm constantly, there's different extremes and everything in the middle. The first thing you hear is this, right? Am I going to lose my job? And the next thing you hear is, or should I thank AI for the promotion that I just got? And again, remember, if you think about it the right way, and if you teach your employees this and get them in this same mindset, they'll embrace the new technology as opposed to shying away from it. A couple of slides from a data perspective. I had 5 weeks to do a ton of research, so I don't want to inundate you with stats and numbers, but I think some of this is really important. Gartner put out their hype cycle in 2023, and generative AI is at the top of the hype, right? Mass hype, it's all the rage, and 1 year later, it's now moving into this trough of disillusionment, which basically means the hype is over and now people need results, right? However, what I will say is generative AI is not going away. This chart, the dark blue, shows the percentage of AI that is generative AI versus non-generative AI. Generative AI is coming on pretty strong, but again, AI has been around for many, many, many years. You're just seeing sort of the fruits of the labor of the computational power and the mass quantities of data that these LLMs are feeding off of. So what does all this mean? Couple more stats. And this one is from a McKinsey global survey that was done, or it came out May 30th of this year. And it shows what's wrong a little bit and what's causing some of the problems with adoption. 91% of employees now are using Gen AI for work, and they're happy with it. They like it. However, only 65% of businesses use generative AI regularly. How is that possible? Right? What that basically means is that companies are using AI, i.e. their employees are, they just don't know about it. So if the company doesn't help steer that ship, bad things can happen. And I go on to say, only 13% of businesses have multiple Gen AI use cases. The majority of them are only focused on a single use case. Now, the good news is there's a wave of tools coming that are baking that some of these companies, many companies are already using. So you're using AI, we just need to embrace it a little bit more. McKinsey, in that same survey, found that only 5.25%, a little over 5% of the companies that they surveyed had any material gains, right? Over 10%, meaning of the money they invested in those AI projects, they got a lift of 10%. And only 2%, 2.2, got gains over 20% of EBIT. And Gartner is predicting that by the end of 2025, over 30% of Gen AI projects are going to be canned and shelved. I think what you're seeing is companies need to do a better job of educating their employees and embracing it. Of the cohort of the 5.2 or 5 and 2% of companies that are actually achieving lift, the common thread that they found is those companies that are getting real gains invested heavily in their employees and created super users. You already have employees, 91% of employees, using Gen AI today. They're probably hiding it if the company has a negative stance. So it's coming, it's here, you might as well lean into it. That's kind of my takeaway from reading some of these surveys and studies is the best companies created rabid users internally. The other thing, this starts to lead into, first off, I'll say, Gartner, this is a Gartner study. Gartner trends a little bit bigger on the company size, right? So this is not probably a representation of every single company on the planet or in the United States, right? It's not really accounting for, I think, a lot of the smaller companies. So they focus on bigger. But what they found is that the typical use cases for Gen AI, the upfront startup cost to get a Gen AI project or a Gen AI project off the ground is 100 to 200K on the low end. And that's if you're using sort of commercial Gen AI apps. Then you have to embed, extend, customize, build, different use cases, right? But one extreme is you're using tools, and the other extreme is you're building your own LLM, which is insane, right? There's very few companies on the planet that should even be thinking that way. I've always been a fan of buying versus building if it's not my core competency, right? If it's not what my business sells. The point of this slide is be very careful trying to get AI off the ground in your company by thinking you have to do it yourself. The amount of tools that are coming out that can consume your data, you just need to find the right partner and the right tool. And if you don't know, there are a number of companies in town that can help you get a pilot or help sort of consult and service. That these guys understand the space better. So don't do this alone. Pull in some experts if you're thinking about going down the build path. This is the biggest, in my opinion, this is the biggest problem that I see with companies today. Generative AI is not a magic wand. It doesn't solve everything. It solves a sliver of use cases. There's other AI that you can deploy for different use cases. So again, I'm not going to get into all the minutia and the details. I would buy or use off-the-shelf tools and feed them my data before I would attempt to build something my own. There are obviously reasons to go down the build path, but it's very expensive and very costly. We spent millions into Bandjump building out AI. Some worked and some didn't. We learned a lot, and we were pre sort of Gen AI, but it's still very expensive. So just tread carefully, and just know generative AI does not solve every single problem. What's best, and I've got a couple service partners that I've listed off at one of the last slides here, that you can work with that will, for very inexpensive, think of them as like data science as a service, right? They will come in for a small monthly retainer and help you think through the problems that AI can solve and scope it out and then figure out, are there tools you can use to solve those problems, or do you need to build it yourself? The last thing I'll say, this is the second biggest problem, is when it comes to Gen AI, people forget there's three pillars to this thing. The model, and the model in my mind is a commodity at this point. It's not, but it's quickly becoming a commodity. And they're all gonna leapfrog, ChatGPT, Google, Facebook, they're all gonna keep leapfrogging each other, and they're gonna get better and better and better, and you don't really need to build your own model anymore. The prompt, the instructions, that's becoming an art form. And I think people are getting that wrong. In co-content, my prompts are 2 to 3 times the size of the output of the AI. That is not the norm. The average is a few sentences requesting a ton of data. That you will get a shit result every single time. Or not a shit result, you'll get a general result, right? The thing that's even more important than anything is the data. At the end of the day, these LLMs are trained on an incredible amount of data, so they're already aware of things. What they're not aware is your specific use case. This is why I said earlier, the writers of yesterday are the editors of tomorrow. They're bending AI to their will, and they're doing it with data. I was fortunate enough to go. I was invited on a yacht when we were in Spain, and I met up with a guy who is at the forefront of AI in the healthcare space, and he's doing some incredible things, and talking and sharing notes. Who would have thunk, going on a vacation for 4 or 5 weeks, I met so many people in all walks of life, and the conversation comes up, what do you do? And the second they heard the word AI come out of my mouth, I heard all the use cases that they were using AI for, and I'm shocked. This is not just a US thing, this is it's global. Music producers, DJs, everyone from legal, healthcare, you name it. What you're seeing in the US is equally exploding everywhere. But the companies that are going to be worth a ton of money are the companies that figure out how to improve and enrich and create their own data and then feed that into AI with the right instruction set. So buy or build, I beat this one to death, I think, so I'm not going to touch it anymore, but you should always question buying. You should always buy before you build, in my opinion, because the costs are so much cheaper. All right. That was sort of just a quick backdrop. Now I want to just dive into 10 of the top use cases that I've seen throughout my career, and I'd say more recently. When I was asked to do the speaking engagement, I thought this would be a slam dunk, right? Finding 10 things that you can deploy quickly. I spent 5 weeks chasing this. I spent many hours researching on the internet, talking to some experts, and it was really hard to come up with 10 that you can deploy quickly. And when I say immediate, some of those might be a tool that can be deployed in a couple of days, some might be a few months, right? But that's immediate from an AI standpoint, knowing how long some of these projects take. So the first one is data entry and automation. And people are making the incorrect assumption from a financial planning perspective that you can cut staff by, but I would not go into any business planning by thinking that you can use AI to reduce staff. It's dangerous. Because you always need staff. Again, your staff is going to become your editors, your reviewers, your auditors. It's the man in the middle, right? Or the human in the loop for AI. You need someone creating the AI right now. It's not perfect. I'd go into it thinking that you're going to get a lot more capacity and capability and more strategic work out of the staff that you have. So I've seen a lot of companies basically be able to double or triple their capacity without hiring any more headcount as they've layered AI in. Did they reduce their staff? Did it cost jobs? No. They just didn't have to hire as many as they grew. And the humans, and this stat here is really important, 41% of small businesses use automation to shift resources to higher value work. That's the writer becoming the editor in my mind. Customer service chatbots, think 80-20 rule. You can automate almost 80% of the inbound sort of customer service requests. And there are a ton of off-the-shelf tools right now. There's Zendesk. I mean, most of the help desk software that you're seeing now is coming up with this capability or baking it into the platforms you might already be using. But you can get, and the biggest gains categorically are in tech and product, customer service, and sales and marketing. That's where all the gains are. Internal decisioning and troubleshooting. So think the same use case with customer service chat, but with your data internally focused to your teams. So manufacturing and IoT, IT. So if you think about a manufacturing facility that has custom manufacturing, automation, robots, right, that are putting out a lot of data, feeding that into a chatbot that can process, not chatbot, but feeding it into AI that can process the data and predict failure or predict when something is going wrong. It's a huge use case. I don't know how immediate it is because it depends on the problem and the use case, but it's showing up in some of the top efficiency gains from companies. This one, are there developers? Any developers? One? Okay, don't hate me after this. The developers using AI co-pilots for code writing. Most of the developers I know are builders, right? So they're culturally wired to build, and they're passionate about building something themselves. So the reason this says 20 to 500% is, I think, a big part of that is a desire from a development standpoint to build the code themselves as opposed to relying on AI to do it for them. In other words, developers might be resisting moving from the writer to the editor, right? And they need a bit of a push. There might be other reasons for that efficiency gain, depending upon like how much software is actually in play inside of the company. But I will tell you, culturally, I've struggled with this at companies in the past. But I just launched a company with 0 developers and what I would call low-code tools. I still had to write code. I still had to write extremely complex code, Lambda functions, and those are not, for a non-developer, not simple things to code, and I didn't have to. I turned to AI and had it write it for me. Did it work right out of the gate? Nope. It took one little tweak, and I got it done in about 10 minutes. Prior to that, I spent hours researching and trying to figure out on my own before waking up and going, why the hell am I doing this? Why don't I just use a co-pilot? And it worked. If you give your developers a push, what you'll find is they're able to bang out a hell of a lot more code. Good things can happen, but just be prepared for pushback. Developers don't want to hand over the keys to the castle to AI so easily, and they want to build, at least the ones that I have the most experience with. Data enrichment. Tyler turned me on to this one, and it has to do with enriching data that you have, or some of the data that you have might have gaps. And an example of this, I'll give you from co-content from my own company. Me and AI, created a platform to write content. The use case, if you've ever used ChatGPT to write a blog, it sounds easy, it's not. And by the time you get done with all the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to get the damn thing to talk the way that you talk and whatever, hours go by. You could have just done it yourself. With co-content, I didn't want that. So you can literally put in your website and the platform will tell you how you write, what your tone of voice is, if it's active or passive, who your target audience is. It tells you all of it. It tells you all of it because I crawl the website, extract content, and then turn around and feed it to AI and ask it to classify that content or that data, right? That's kind of what we're talking about from a data enrichment standpoint. And going back to a couple of slides earlier, data is gold. And the more data you have, the better. And AI can fill in the gaps. It does really well with classification. I'm doing some fairly complex stuff where it falls down a little bit, but basic category and classification information it nails. It's pretty solid, especially ChatGPT 4.0. But anyway, I've seen big gains from this already. Product managers are now using this to create better product stories. Most developers will tell you, garbage in, garbage out. You told me this, we coded that, your problem, that's a feature, not a bug, whatever, right? How do you solve that problem? How do you protect your greatest asset from a product standpoint, I think, is the developer. The more time they have doing strategic thought work, the faster you're going to move from an innovation standpoint. And if they're stuck constantly reworking things because we didn't get the requirements right, which is basically my entire career, is that problem with developers. If we can shortcut that and AI can think through some of the use cases, and I will say with this, it's not just one chat and you get something back that works. It's typically some back and forth with ChatGPT, and I get phenomenal user stories. I used this in August because I'm lazy and I didn't want to write my own user stories, and I was working with a third party. Didn't like the third party, but I will say the user stories that I got from ChatGPT, even back a year ago, were great. Sales outreach. So this is somewhat misleading because I got that 15 to 30x increase by doing it manually with an army of people versus AI. I haven't found a good tool yet. I'm sure they're popping up left and right. And I know there's some folks, even in Indianapolis, that are working on this. If you personalize an outbound sales outreach email, if you personalize that first sentence or two, your chances of success go up dramatically, right? I can spot templated emails a mile away, and I do not unsubscribe, I do not answer, I hit spam every single time. And what you're seeing this year in particular, Google and Yahoo are cracking down on this a lot. So if someone emails me and I see it's templated, if I get another job invite for $15 an hour for some clerical thing, I mean, that tells me they haven't done any homework on me. I'm clearly not interested in data entry, the wrong data. And I'm out, right? Not only that, enough people start hitting the spam button and that company gets annihilated. So personalization is critical. The company that I did this for, the numbers were so profound that we're putting more bodies on it until we can solve it with AI. But making the first sentence or two, the rest of the email can still be templated. That first sentence or two of personalized outreach that makes your product or value relevant to something going on with that company or that person in that moment, so time matters, huge. From this 15 to 30x was not an increase in response rate downstream, it's an increase in meeting sets, right? When you're doing it with humans, you can't move fast enough. You can do it with AI, you can move a hell of a lot faster, and that is a massive game changer to a company that needs more meeting sets for sales. Sales forecasting. There are some phenomenal companies. One of them is Collective Eye, and I know their founders. They built one of the largest affiliate networks and cashed out for sold it to a company for $660 million in 2006, and then have been working on this company in the sales forecasting space. It's called Collective Eye. They can see, if you think about your sales resources from a cost perspective, having a salesperson chase a deal that is dead is an absolute waste of capital. I would rather force them to lost the deal and move on and invest in something that you can win. So knowing what's never going to close is equally as important as what deals are starting to stall or might need extra action. And the Collective Eye does that incredibly well. And by the way, I think they just launched a self-service model for super cheap, like a couple $100 a month or something like that, with no commitment, I believe. So you can try some of these. This is what I was saying earlier. Like, you can try some of these tools for almost nothing, plug your CRM into it, and let it rip and see how it goes. If it works, go. If it doesn't, unplug it. This is big. Every time I do segmentation, especially with creative targeting, we double performance, right? If I have a general campaign versus targeting a specific retail category, you double it. And I'm talking about, I had a company that was doing something in the shipping space, and they had a generic ad that worked for everyone, and then we just cloned that ad and swapped out the image and put sporting goods stuff in it and targeted the sporting goods industry. And the click-through rate and response rate, the leads, doubled just by targeting and making it more personalized. But how do you know how that persona thinks? ChatGPT is actually really good, and I'm sure there are other LLMs are not bad at it, but ChatGPT I have the most experience with. They can help you think through segmentation and personalization, like what your persona should be, what they care about, and the type of messaging that would work for them. And that can happen instantly, whereas if I have to do it, I got to go do research, and it just takes time that, as a marketer, I just don't have time anymore. Marketing creative, we kind of talked about this one, and I would say that when you start segmenting, it's a minimum of 2x every time you segment. And the tighter you get with these buckets, the better. It's hard to scale that. And again, the writers of yesterday are the editors of tomorrow. Your designers kind of have the same sort of mentality oftentimes that developers have. They want to build the creative. And if you just give them a little push and some education, I think they'll find they can bang out a lot more creative that is high quality, and they become the orchestrator, not the doer all the time, right? They don't need to do, they need to orchestrate. All right, then co-content. I've spent my entire career kind of building up to this moment, and I will say SEO is not easy. This space is not easy. I'm guessing if I ask the question of who's got an email from someone that says, hey, we can help you with your SEO efforts, like everyone would raise their hand. And probably if I said keep your hands up if you get those emails every single week, everyone would probably have their hands up. But there's a lot of bullshit out there, and people aren't attacking it with the right data. We have two use cases that we focused on. This one is around improving existing marketing content. Most marketers are one and done. You launch that new content and you're on to the next. That's a perfect use case for AI to come in, look at the numbers, figure out what's missing, why it's not performing, and automatically create content. And that's what co-content does automatically. The second you add your pages, seconds later, it does all the research, figures out where you're at, why you're not ranking there, what content you're missing, and it writes the content for you. and gives you a copy button, so you can copy and paste it on your page and publish. It's literally that simple. And then the last thing is new marketing content. The average blog costs $300 to $1,200 to create. Co-content has packages that bring the cost of a piece of content down to about $5 to $10. At scale, and you don't have to train it like you have to train a writer. It self-trains by analyzing your website, consuming it all, and putting a bow on it for the marketers. So packages for us start at as low as $20 a month. We tried to make it, I keep saying we, me and AI. We made it really inexpensive, month-to-month packages so you can try it. If you can, give it a shot. Let me know how you like it. A couple of tools and partners, and some call-outs to some folks that helped me with this. We compare notes, and Indy's got a wonderful ecosystem. I called Tyler, poor guy, who has 2 young kids, at 8:30 last night, just to gut check with him, am I missing anything, and he helped me fill it out. So I just want to say special thanks to Tyler. He is an incredible mathematician and absolute genius, and I've been delighted to work with him. He's been a great mentor. Some of the other service partners that I recommend taking a look at. Data 317 is great at rapid AI prototyping. Zach is a brilliant mind that can put things in very, very simple terms that anyone can understand. And he's great to work with. And he's basically built a company that is data science as a service. You don't have to go spend $200,000-$300,000 for a data scientist. And yes, that's the going rate for a very experienced one. You can start for as little as like $5-8K a month or something, whatever. It's really, really inexpensive, and you can kind of, he has really flexible packages, but he'll come in, work with you, understand your business, and then help figure out if you should buy or if you should build something or whatever. Stellar is another great one. Resultant is another one in town. They focus more on, I'd say, mid-market, slightly larger companies. Zach's kind of full gamut, but he helps sort of the little companies as well as the large ones. And then from a tools and platform standpoint, please take a look at Co-Content. Give it a try, free trial, so you literally try it out for free. Tell your marketers about it. Collectivize is another one I would take a look at from a sales forecasting and improvement standpoint. CMO Copilot is another company I just ran into recently that helps with persona creation, right, to help marketers figure out who they should be targeting. And Unitus.ai is Baggett. I forget his first name. Chris Baggett's son, Matt Baggett. And they do sales personalization. I spoke with them a few months ago, and they're, I think, in that early stage of launch, but definitely a company that I would take a look at given the lift. That's a wrap. Thank you.